Well, hello there, I'm Detroit and let's do this. Today I'm gonna give you some tips about digital painting and my process. Some things that you might already know and things that you will never hear enough in your pursuit of digital drawing. For this video, I'm going to be using Photoshop CC 2017 with my Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, but the tips should work on any software and hardware. Also, let me remind you that I'm not a professional. These are just things I do and that I find really helping, but you might be better at this than I am. It's okay, this channel is all about learning, so please tell me in the comments all you can think of about digital drawing and what you think I'm doing wrong. Of course, you can also leave a comment telling me that you liked the video or disliked it. Oh, and all the jazz still applies. Leave a like, subscribe for weekly videos, etc, etc. Don't let me down, I trust you. Okay, here I go. This drawing process is going to be separated in a few parts, the first being construction, or sketching. For this, I'm using Jazza's construction pencil brush. If you don't know Jazza, go check him out, he's great. I like this brush because it feels like pencil and it's really easy to sketch with it. So this part is all about finding the thing you have in your mind and putting it on the canvas. It's the part where it's the easiest to change different parts and remodel your piece. Because we are doing this digitally, it's almost too easy to do. For this part, I alternate a lot between the brush tool with the keyboard shortcut B, the lasso tool, the L key, in order to select part of the drawing, and the transformation tool, Ctrl T. I'm also doing this part on a single layer, but that's really up to you. The idea behind the sketching part is to make your drawing look good. This is where you pay a special attention to the proportions of what you're drawing, because if your proportions are messed up at this point, this is not going to change during the entire process. A great tool for that is to flip the image. Let me explain. When you spend long enough on something, your eyes adjust to what you're doing in a way that you don't even see the obvious mistakes you've made. In order to avoid that, you can either leave your drawing for at least an hour or two, look at it in a mirror, or even better, since we're using digital, flip the canvas. That will give you instantly a completely new eye on your piece, and you'll be surprised at how many mistakes you didn't know you had made. Alright, I don't think there's too much to cover on the sketching part. I'll let the clip roll now and I'll be back when we get to the next main part. Hi, I'm back. Now we're on to the second part of the drawing, the line art. Because at this point I still had not decided whether I wanted a more realistic feel to the piece or a more comic-y look, so I decided to do some line art. Since I wasn't sure I was going to keep it all the way, I didn't use any special brush, because if it looked too good, I didn't want to be too attached to this layer. What I use for this is the simplest circular opaque brush. It's basically just a round shape you're dragging around, for which there's little to no feathering, and with the pressure and opacity turned off. What this does is that no matter how hard you press, it's not going to get any bigger or darker. It's a simple line. Now you only have to think about making that simple line look as good as you need it. For that, just put your fingers on Ctrl Z and draw an erase until your line is exactly how you want it. Don't settle for something a bit meh when you can draw out the best using digital tools. Whether you keep a line art throughout the entire piece or not, I find this step in the process very useful because it helps cleaning up the sketch to the most important lines only. And because I've also included the tiniest bit of shading in my sketch, I overlap the second step with the third a little bit, for which I'll see you in a few seconds. Alright, it's now time for the third step, the one where you think about the light a lot. It's a good part and a crucial one too. I have a few tips for this one, things I wish I had known for a lot longer than I did. First off, let's start with clipping masks. If you don't know what they are, I recommend you check out other tutorial videos that will better explain and in more details. To make it simple, here's what this is. When you block out a shape, meaning that on a layer you fill an area with something, be it black and white or color or line, then you can make a layer above it. Then right-click on it and select clipping mask. What this does is that on this new layer, whatever you draw or paint will only appear where the layer overlaps the layer under it. So basically it's a tool to keep good edges and not spill on the sides. That brings me to my next tip. With the amazing tool that is a clipping mask, you can now use big bold strokes without being afraid that you'll go too far. And that is important. In digital drawing, as well as in classical arts, a big bold stroke is almost always better. It's more firm and less, wonky. So I go in and paint in one opaque color over the entire shape that I want blocked in. In this part, you have to be precise about your contour, which is also why I used line art before. Only then on your clipping mask you can go in and set your values and really start painting. For that, I recommend you use the soft brush. What I use is a circular soft brush with pressure opacity and pressure size on. Contrarily to the brush for the line art, this time pressing harder will make the stroke larger and closer to the color you've selected. That's one of the most basic brushes you can use in Photoshop, and I'll tell you why I use it. It's because I'm learning. On a drawing software, you can find literally an infinite amount of brushes to do anything. But think about it. How good would a piece look if your structure and composition is bad, your understanding of the light is inconsistent, but the rock you drew had the best texture ever? It will look bad. There's no way to use a special brush set if you don't take the time to understand how it works beforehand. It's like in anything. The car you're driving doesn't make you a better driver. So first you have to start a bit lower and make sure you have the basics right. And this is really important and something that I lost quite a good amount of precious time doing because I didn't understand that at first, sadly. Anyway, enough rambling about brushes, you've got it now. For the entire piece, I'm only using a soft round brush and a hard-edged one. Now, something I haven't addressed yet is values. Obviously, my piece is going to be in colors, sorry for the spoil. But the thing with colors is that when you use them from the beginning, then you have to think of the hue and saturation at the same time. Let me explain. When you want to choose the skin tone, you have to think about the color of the skin, as well as how the lights affect it. It's way too hard to think about, especially for a beginner. So what you can do is draw the entire thing in black and white. This way you're able to concentrate only on values, meaning the tones of gray. For that, I start with a simple medium gray on a clipping mask, and using big bold strokes I had a lighter gray for light areas and a darker gray for shadows. At first I keep it only to 3 different values, dark, middle and light. This helps find the composition of the light in your image. Where the stone casts a big shadow on the girl or where a rocky outcrop catches a bit of direct light. This is where all the depth of your pieces come from, where the girl is not 2-dimensional anymore and becomes 3D. When you're done using the 3 value scale on your entire piece, now you can refine it. New tip, remember to always start big and then go small. You don't want to render and zoom in a lot at this point. What you want is first to make out the big dark areas, for example, and only then will you go alternating between the color picker, which is the I key, and the brush, which is the B key. And then soften your areas according to what it represents. If you're drawing the shadows in the bend of an elbow, let's say, you're gonna have a hard shadow because there's no light in there. But if it's the distant shadow of the rock on the girl's thigh, then as you go away from the rock, the shadow will softly blur out into a lighter area. Do you understand what I'm saying? My point is that you can use the soft brush to blend the areas together and further the impression of depth, basically. Now is also about the time I decided against keeping the line art. And what I did for that in order to keep the informations of my line art layer is simple. I painted over it. By placing the line art below another layer instead of leaving it on top, I can now paint over it. Because whether you keep the line art or not, you still need to define, for example, the interspace between the figures or the folds of an eyelid. Usually, when there is a fold in skin or fabric, one side of the dark area will have a soft edge and one will have an hard edge. Because nothing in this world has a strong black outline around it, and especially so if you opt for a more realistic painting. I'm not going to explain much more than that. There are thousands of better tutorials for that on YouTube. Just know that for this step of the drawing, sticking to black and white and alternating between the color picker and the brush are your best friends. Now we move on to the second to last part, the texturing. This is where you'll see me draw the crevices in the rock, smooth out the dress and the skin, and draw the hair. I don't have much to say about that, except once again, using textured brush is bad if you don't know how to properly use them. For this, I actually had to look at a ton of references for the rock crevices. I finally ended up using the feather round brush to draw the crevices and then going with the eraser to shape them. Also, I have to admit that I'm really bad at drawing hair. I'm still working on it, but damn is it hard. Because I was getting tired with the piece at this point, I opted for a textured hairbrush, and I know I didn't follow my own advice. But what I did there only worked because I chose to draw long straight hair, and from kind of far away, you don't really see it. But still, it's not realistic enough, but I'll do better when I find out how. This is all about learning, okay? We are closing out on the end of this video now, with the last part being the coloring. For the coloring, since your entire piece is in grayscale, there's nothing simpler. On a separate layer, simply draw over each area what basic color it is and use a layer style. For those of you who don't know what a layer style is, it's the small bar above the layers. By setting it to a soft light style, your values will blend with the color. What I recommend you do is fiddle with the layer styles a bit, adjusting the opacity until you find the right spot. What is also useful is copy your color layer and use multiple layer style at the same time. What it did here is use a soft light layer at around 80% opacity and a multiply layer at a very low 10% opacity. And don't worry if the color isn't perfectly right at this point. The next great tip is to use the hue saturation grid to adjust the color. First, by adjusting the white curve, you can make your darks and whites closer to perfection. And then going with each curve for RGB, red, green and blue, you can adjust the color of hue that you're using. Finally, when you're ready to end the piece, you can go back in and zoom to get all the details that feel right. This is also the moment I used to do a simple background so that the girl would not be just floating in space. Just keep in mind that at this point the lighting of your drawing is perfectly set, so you can't change the tone of the background by much. Also keep it simple because it's not your focal point here. I'm still working on my backgrounds and landscapes, so I went over it very quickly here. Maybe in the future I'll make the same kind of video from what I learned about painting landscapes. Tell me in the comments if you would like that. Alright, it's the end now. I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm an amateur hoping to learn more and help others by telling you all about my progression into the world of art. Don't forget to hit like right now, leave a comment and subscribe. Hell, even share the video. And I'll see you next Sunday for a new video. Détroit out. Bye!